Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Public Safety and Health Committee of the Cleveland Heights City Council. It is January 28th at 6 o'clock. Let's have the roll. Is Vice Chair Gail Larson here?
Here.
Member Craig Cobb?
Yes, present.
Council Member Jim Petrus, who's decided to join us tonight. We're getting started a few minutes late. There was a Housing Committee meeting that ran a tad over, and a lot of very excited citizens that were here that just did not want to leave the room quick enough. But that's all right. So we have an agenda. The first is a conversation with the mayor. We had I had a discussion with him. There was 2 items on that. I am just going to park that item. The mayor has a lot on his plate right now because of the fire and other issues. We'll go back to this and talk about this regardless of the mayor comes or not. Moving on to the second item, which is the citation data. I kind of thought for the spirit of tonight's meeting is to kind of overview some of the things that we had brought up in prior meetings. We have a little bit more data than what we've had in the past. I've got a item up on the screen. Hopefully the members of the public are able to see it. This is data from the Cleveland Heights Court. And these are citation numbers in the table, and this is an email that was given to me back in August that included 2023 information. I added just the number for 2024. Back in 2025, we had about 10,333 citations. These are traffic cases. We've noticed because of the pandemic, we had the George Floyd incident that is making things difficult for police departments to hire staff. It is my understanding our police staff is still about 10% down. When I last met with Chief Britton, they are working on ways to increase it. One of the things Cleveland Heights administration and council did is we passed, essentially there was a negotiation. We gave them a raise. The police were paying much more. We're paying fair market value, where before we were probably under market when it came to paying our police. We've done the same thing with our fire departments, our fire resources, valuable safety resources that were probably in the past underpaid. So hopefully, with the higher pays for the police and fire and other safety forces, we'll be able to get more people hired. The data went up from 2023 to 24. I mean, when I say the data, the number of citations went up. I have not had a chance to talk to the police officer or the mayor about it. I literally got this information last week. Not that we're trying to celebrate more citations. I think it's sort of like do you celebrate or do you feel bad? But at one point, members of this committee made statements such as, in the past, you could never get away with speeding in Cleveland Heights. Now with more citations, we'll see if that behavior can change. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I just want to share this data.
It's interesting when you take what that statement has been. We often hear about that you couldn't speed in Cleveland Heights. You go all the way back and look at 2015 where there were 10,000 some citations issued. Mm-hmm. And then there's been a drop in the citations over the last few years, then an increase. So I'd be curious to know if it's a focus change from the police department next time we get to talk to Chief Britton. Mm-hmm. If there's something that he can attribute that to, I don't know.
Well, we did hear that there was going to be more. I want to use the word night shift. I think I have the wrong term, but we were going to have more beat cops, from what I understand, in more of the neighborhoods. So I don't know if that is folk that would be policing more in the commercial areas, or if there'd be more squad cars in those areas. But I guess if you're measuring performance based on increased numbers, and I'm not sure that's the right way to look at this from here, going from 4,500 to 5,700, that's a pretty big jump over a period of a year. Mm-hmm. And if the goal is to try to get, not trap people, but try to have more efforts on traffic safety, more police on the streets, I mean, you will see those numbers increase, I would presume. So I'm gonna ask you if you can just sort of park this item, because I think hopefully it'll come up again later in our conversation. Switch my sheets right now to this next set of pieces of information. I had a constructive meeting since our last meeting with Ken Bernard and Eric Zamp from our planning department. Ken is he pretty much runs, he's a member of the planning department and deals with GIS and mapping. We were talking about speed tables in one of our prior meetings and trying to get an understanding of how effective they were or not effective. The city is starting to experiment using this new big data cell phone data service called Urban SDK that tracks cell phone usage on various streets. And because of the mapping in the cell phone, it's able to run some algorithms and provide average speeds on various streets. So you're able to look at hotspots. There were 2 traffic tables that were installed this past year, one on Harcourt and the other one on South Taylor, somewhat close to the Fairmont interchange. South Taylor and Harcourt pretty much in the middle of the street between North Park and where it connects to Cedar Road. We have a series of maps here, 2 in particular. Kind of think of it as a before and after. What we have on the screen right now is the before. I should probably zoom into this because we don't need to have this. It's so small here. Okay, so this is our map. This is the before, the traffic table. I don't know if Addie's had a chance to put this data in the packet, so members of the public can get it. I will ask her to do so under the packet information meeting notes. But what I've shared with our Mr. Petrus, you have your hand up.
If I could, so this data here, is this for the highlighted area on Harcourt, or is that for the entire diagram?
It's for the highlighted area. It's the highlighted area in yellow is the approximate location of the speed table.
I think it's really interesting to see that the speeds did reduce in the targeted area, went down in both of these locations, South Taylor and Harcourt.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm pretty sure that all of my colleagues would agree that the speed tables can be an effective way to calm traffic. As we have so many neighborhoods that are concerned about speeding in their neighborhoods, I just want to raise the point, perhaps to have a discussion with whomever is making the decisions about the speed table placement. Is it Chief Britton? Is it the police department? Is it the mayor that decide where those speed tables will go?
I don't know.
Because I have people that, for instance on Woodview, which is going to be affected by the construction on the Nobility Court project. That street is long and it's a cut through. And they've been told that, I'm assuming it's the Urban DK data that was collected that said the average speeds don't justify any speed calming or more patrols or whatever would be the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if the administration come up with a strategy to allow these people that have been told your perception is not reality, and perhaps agree to put one of those posts that has the speed measurement on it and that collects data that can be collected over time, and to see if there's possibility that perhaps some of these other streets, because we used to have that application program, right? You could apply with the petition from your
Right.
neighborhood, and that got a lot of responses, but they weren't able to put in place all of those particular issues or resolve those issues. So we did 2, but it seems like I'd like to see some way they can increase the numbers and maybe go back and revisit some of those streets that people are still seeing. Because you might see an average of 25 or 27, but if you see somebody going down your street 11 o'clock at night that's doing 60, you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of nuances, I think, when you look at this data, and by all means, I think the operative word here is I'm not an expert at it, so this is a layperson making some comment, but I mean, you're gonna have sort of the outliers that are gonna go 90 miles. You know, do these speed bumps actually solve the really egregious offenders of the speeding? And I don't know, and I don't know if this software package can deal with it. I do know that there is a lot of emphasis from our planning department reviewing this. There's talk about them adjusting some of the interfaces and working with the folks to get more detailed data that I believe that they would find to be more helpful. I think what we need to sort of, not that I think we're on thin ice here. Well, first of all, I just want to get one comment straight for the public. So there's two pieces of data for Harcourt. This is the before, where you had an average speed of 27 miles an hour, and there's a after, which is where you're able to lower that amount by approximately 6 miles an hour, which may not seem to be a lot, but you're really going. I mean, at 21 mile an hour, that's close to school zone speed, and obviously a very safe speed. But this is just an example of the Harcourt data. Moving on to the Taylor data, we have this is South Taylor. To orientate everybody, we have Fairmont Road is the road on the bottom that obviously dead ends. It dead ends into a house that has had multiple cars ride on its tree lawn and do some significant damage to the owner's property. And from what I presume, the rationale to put this speed table here is to slow the traffic as it approaches Fairmont. So when you sort of look at the data, this is looking at the speed bump in both directions. So this is a before going in one direction. This is a before going in the next direction. These are the two after, where you're able to bring that speed down again to somewhere around 5 to 6 miles per hour slower. People may not think that that's a big speed, but I mean, I think the issue though is these are average speeds. And I think when you do hit that traffic table, you really have to creep over it. But what I was gonna say is really kind of the slippery slope of what we do as a council, as a legislative body. There is, and on top of that, part of our role is, approving budgets and specifically capital budgets. And as Dan Horrigan, our new Chief Administrator Officer, I'm gonna get his title wrong, Shaker's administrator, but essentially the number 2 person in the city that works under the mayor. He referred to the budget as a roadmap, and there's irony, I suppose, in that word. But I mean, it is a roadmap, but here we are trying to work with the city passing a budget, city administration passing a budget, and try to get some of our values built into that budget. And Gail, you mentioned that it's important to see how these things can scale. So I'd like to sort of get everybody's opinion of that. I mean, just with what we know, do we try to push for this in some of our budget conversations? Do we try to get more information from the administration when it comes to these things? I mean, these traffic tables that were installed are rented from NOACA. Generally, the way it works, from what I understand, from people in other cities. You get a traffic table, you're supposed to return it after you sort of see its impact. You either replace it with a permanent, or you keep it there for as long as you can, and you just buy another one, a new one that then goes into NOACA's inventory. You essentially replace the one that you borrowed with a new one, so you get to keep yours. I don't know if we intend to keep these. I mean, generally, I think they pull them out in the winter, but they're up right now.
Director Klingscale said they were going to try to give the snowplow operators some training, and also because those traffic tables are preceded by signs, hopefully the plows would be able to, whatever they needed to do to get over there without damaging the traffic tables. So I've been over them a couple times and they look like they're holding up okay. So maybe her training worked, I don't know.
Have you seen the traffic tables? I think there's maybe 2 or 3 on the street. It's the first street from Shaker into Cleveland on Larchmere. So if you're near the Academy Tavern, make a right across the street. It's the first Cleveland street, and it cuts up to
Shaker Boulevard.
Fair Hill, is that?
Fair Hill.
127,
Right. 127?
yeah.
127. That has a couple traffic tables on it, and they're permanent, and they're nicely well signed.
Mhm.
It would behoove you to take a drive just to see how they really feel like they're part of the neighborhood.
If I may,
Sure.
talking about budget, we did, because when we were having the hearings, I asked for $500,000 for traffic calming and just brought that up. We did get that grant for traffic calming, $800,000. The city's match is $200,000. So if we match on the budget that $200,000, I would hope that we'll see more scaled up installations of traffic calming than we have seen so far.
Well, I think that's a good question to ask.
Yeah.
And I think, we have to redo a lot of those budget hearings once we get the capital budgets.
Yeah.
And I think those are constructive conversations that
Yeah.
I think we can bring to the table.
Thank you.
And
If I could, I think that the speed reductions in here are interesting because the city of Cleveland found across the speed tables that they tested, there was a 7 mile per hour reduction. And that seems very similar to what we see in our data. And so I think that tells me that our data is probably good. And I'm interested in continuing to push on this because, as you know, going to Stone Oven as often as you do, that road is pretty unsafe. There are others across the city that people know are unsafe. And I'm glad that the staff has purchased a lot of equipment, but I want to continue to advocate for that issue.
well, I think some of this, so you mentioned sort of validation. I don't think we've actually said, I think this validates the work staff is doing.
Yes.
And I think that's important from an outside body like ours to see, especially, since we hold on to the purse strings and we are sort of in a position where we are in a budget process. I think we wish we were in that budget process in December and not now, but I would very much like to see more money spent. I mean, I know we've got the Safe Streets for Cleveland Heights grant money. That's, the seed project. There's some low-hanging fruit items. There seems to be a lot of good work being done in that particular area. I think it's our responsibility as council to support that work and and obviously fund it.
Yeah.
So,
Agreed.
any other thoughts when it comes to this particular item?
It's very helpful. Thank you.
Now we have the Shaker Listening Project. One would think this is sort of way outside our scope. Have any of you heard of the Shaker Loop Listening Project or been a part of it?
This is the first I've heard of it.
There was a situation in Shaker where there was there was a pending ballot measure that folks were getting petitions for to essentially, I don't wanna say defund the police, but change the way that the police would spend money in Shaker. And the core rationale behind that was targeting, but it's not targeting, but reviewing citations, speed citations, and correlating that the racial the level of racial diversity in Shaker Heights did not measure the racial diversity that you would typically see in the speeding tickets. You'd see a lot more black drivers getting pulled over, and there was significant concern about that. I think all the parties on both sides of it realized, let's find a way to work together. One of them was to increase Shaker's DEI work. And part of that was coming up with this listening project, which a lot of it is somewhat racially motivated, but it came down to, really, it's a lot more than DEI. This is more of looking at the entire body of Shaker Heights and looking at where they were. And the irony is, it started out as more of a traffic piece, but it really got to bigger. They really looked at public safety, and they basically did a series of surveys. And one of them, I'll read the question is, which of the following are your top 5 concerns regarding public safety in your neighborhood? So they really weren't talking about traffic safety. And the number 1 item was traffic safety, followed by theft and burglaries, gun violence. There was a series of other items which could be categorized under 24%. So they kind of those are sort of the smaller issues, and then the destruction and vandalism. So it's sort of interesting when you sort of look at the measures, the percentages next to them. Now surveys are helpful, but it depends on the wording of the question. It depends on who your audience is. Let's just go with the assumption that this is a well done survey. A significant number, 72% essentially of the top 5 concerns of the people in Shaker think traffic safety is a concern. Now, I don't know if we're the same as Shaker, but if you can take that leap, this seems to be a pretty important thing when it comes to traffic safety.
I think if I remember when we were given the results of the community gatherings that the city held, that traffic safety was a number 1 issue. But I'm having trouble recalling that data right now.
So that was before my time. How much before my time was it? Was it something that was recent?
Yeah. 2024, remember when they held those?
Yeah, I was looking to see if I could find it quickly. I'm also, the city, it's been a while since we did that survey. Do you remember we used to send the survey out? And it would get back thousands of responses, and it would ask people
Really?
about things going on in the city and their perception of crime, city services. And then they broke down the results by neighborhood. It's been years since we've done one of those surveys.
And how did they disseminate it?
Online.
And they got that many
I
responses?
believe it was
Wow.
online.
That's pretty cool.
I don't recall filling out a piece of paper, but I've done 2 of those in the time that I've lived in Cleveland Heights.
Well, I will tell you, surveys are a really effective way in order to get better at what you do.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't know what you do, and it is difficult when you're dealing with competing priorities. And when you get a list of something like this, you look at, we have gun violence, which is at a 31%, and we have traffic safety, which is a 72%, with theft and burglaries So it really, I mean, there's not much of a city can do about gun violence, but there's things that we can do about traffic safety and theft and burglaries. I mean, this is not saying that we're not doing anything in those particular areas. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying just from a way of just measuring and prioritizing things. So again, we're legislators. We're not necessarily the people that are behind the wheel implementing the work here in City Hall, but we are controlling things that are funding related. It would seem to me that this is another measure of when, we're given a budget to look at, or when we're asked to participate in a budget process, this should be one of our priorities.
Yeah.
Do you guys all agree with that?
Yeah, I think one of the things we've been striving for is to become more data-driven in our legislation and our funding requests. So any data we can get that helps us analyze it. Did you find it?
There, 2020 and 2016, I don't think there was a specific question on traffic safety, and what it was mailed to residents. 7-page survey, random sample of households. Only 452 completed the survey.
Of how many?
And I don't know how many, it was mailed to a random sample of households in the city of Cleveland Heights.
So they didn't send it to everybody.
I can't imagine you have a good sample with just 400 people, 400 respondents.
They're claiming that there was a 95% level of confidence in the responses. So I don't know where, I just did a quick search on our thing, but I don't see a specific question.
So part of the Racial Justice Task Force was to deploy a survey. That was one of their recommended outcomes. I'm wondering if it makes sense to try to breach this idea with the administration and express that it's something that we may want to look at.
Particularly if we've done it in the past.
Yeah, it did not look like that. The safety questions were more about police response, ambulance, perceptions of safety, overall feeling of safety in the city, feel safe in the parks, city's efforts to prevent crime. Low scores on that in the 60s.
So one of the things we did in the school district is we had some similar surveys that would go out. Regrettably, they went out around the time levies went out. Because some people perceive that as a way of trying to influence the election. But I will tell you, as board members, when we would see the results of those, they were more comparative year after year after year, because they were really the same surveys with the intent of, not only trying to get measures of people's perceptions of the schools and what they thought of them, and a measurement, good, bad, indifferent, kind of measurements. They were really helpful just to sort of compare year after year.
I think that's interesting that the continuity would be there if you could ask the same questions, but did they do it every fourth year, or do you remember how often they did it?
Well, we're pretty in between many levy cycles right now, and I would believe the school district, there was a difference of opinion between many involved with an opinion that the state auditor had. But I don't believe the school district is going to do any more surveys at all. I mean, I'm not part of that district, but but that doesn't stop. Okay, so I think the conversation I'm interested in is if we think it helps us from a legislative perspective to do surveys, we know the mayor and the administration, they have their plan on what they do. And they have their own timeframes and what they do. I mean, does it make sense for us as a council to do this kind of survey?
If the city is not doing this kind of comprehensive survey, then we should be doing it. I think this would be very helpful. You give us a benchmark, particularly now that we're going into the fourth year of this new government. This last survey that was done in the midst of COVID. The one part of that was 2016. They asked the same questions and they compared the results to see where they were. And I don't know why there would be any pushback from the administration. This ought to be something that both council and the administration would want to have done.
I think it'd be worth asking the administration if let's use the Shaker Heights survey as an example, a good example. If that kind of a survey would yield different information than the surveys or the community input that they've gotten through those community gatherings. If there's, I for sure would support a survey if we can get a different perspective on where the citizens are in terms of how they feel about the quality of life that they have in Cleveland Heights. And they've got some interesting questions in this survey they did in 2020, which you're saying was the same as 2014.
Oh, did you find it?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and I seem to recall there being a survey that also broke things down by neighborhood. Now,
That's what I would like to see.
It was a different survey.
Yeah.
And my recollection was that the numbers, does that break it down there or no?
Well,
Okay, yeah, then that is, what page is that? That had the level of satisfaction. And my recollection was that that the north side, the people tended to be more satisfied than, I'm sorry, the south side, they tended to be more satisfied than the north side of the city. But maybe I'm not remembering that correctly.
that was the neighborhood breakdown.
That's on page 12. You must be on a different survey.
Okay, Greg.
You
The
are.
2020 community survey.
Yeah, I've got a difference. How many surveys have we done?
Or page numbers. So I would say yes, Jim. That'd be something I'd be interested in pursuing. How we get there is gonna take some work. But I would like to know if the administration also would be willing to sign on to this and help us distribute.
Okay.
So it's a good idea.
I'm going to give the mayor a heads up and reach out to Dan Horgan about that.
Thank you.
And then if the mayor thinks there's another approach we should take, then we could look at that. But I'm kind of of the mindset that if it's something that is even not on the work plan for the administration, I think this is something council should take on.
And it looks like these questions are pretty thorough. I don't know if we'd want, one of the things that we hear people say when they're asked to fill out a survey, if it's really lengthy, you don't get as much of a response as if it's more concise, but there are a lot of different variables on this particular survey. So this is, I would like to see what the administration's response would be to us doing one similar to the 2020 community survey.
And I think we have to owe, I think we owe it to the Racial Justice Task Force also to just sort of revisit that issue, that survey piece.
Yeah.
I think we owe it to them to
And
to
they would be
revisit that.
good for asking for input.
I'm gonna jump back to item number 2. I think the mayor is clearly excused. There's been a lot of things going on regarding the fire, and I'm sure he's reworking his schedule. I did invite him to the meeting. I thought he would attend. But again, I certainly respect the fact that he's had a lot on his plate. I had a very constructive conversation with the chief and some of the police chief and some of his staff members. And we did talk a little bit about crime statistics and what was available and the reporting structure and how things got reported out. But it's not up to the chief to be able to, take that data and synthesize it and put it together in like heat maps, for example. That is something that then gets sent to Ken Bernard from the planning department. So it really involves the mayor's office and the safety, and the mayor as his role as a safety director. So I asked the mayor about this, and apparently it's really, there's just a lot of. I was hoping that you're going to hear this from the mayor himself, but there's resource challenges. Getting that data and being able to digest it and putting it in the form of things like heat maps. And there didn't seem to be any concern about not sharing it. It seemed to be more of an issue of, boy, we just don't have the resources to do it with everything else that's on our work plan. And then the issue is, how important is this? Is it, do we expand government to be able to get us this kind of data? So that's the kind of conversation, and then again, that kind of comes down to the budget. I can't see how a council can be effective and do its job without this kind of data.
Are we talking about the e-citation data that comes off of the computer units in each police vehicle, where they are inputting their citations? Then
That's part of it. The e-citation data is the data that we shared with everybody.
Okay.
Wrong mouse. That was this data from Judge J.J. Costello. So this is basically it. And this is not, I think the data you really need to look at is the data that actually gets reported up to the FBI. That is reported in a particular format. It's not necessarily, from what I understand, zeroing in on particular neighborhoods. But there's ways that you are able to get that data. I think this is where it gets tricky. I think we've seen some of our software systems are a little outdated. Maybe our GIS system is outdated, and most of these, in my world, everything is about integration. So you buy a package because it integrates to 2 other systems that you have, so they all talk together. So you don't have to load data into everything. It's just automatically 2 systems talk to each other. One that gives you the pretty results, one that does the record keeping. Do we have that kind of system? Do we need to invest in it? We already heard from our finance department that we've got troubling financial systems. I think this is, I think many of us have walked in, and I think including the mayor, walked into a city that, people have not been updating some of its systems. And we certainly know that in the finance department.
Yep.
Is this the case? Is this something that we need to make an investment in? Because this certainly, helps us do our job.
Yep.
I do not want to make our staff members have to jump around in circles just to get data for, me as a council person or council as a whole, when theoretically other cities are pushing a button and just getting it. I'm oversimplifying things.
that also would be helpful for what the Racial Justice Task Force asked us to do, was to look at the data prior to e-citations in those police vehicles. They didn't have a way to collect as to what the race was of the person that had been stopped, or even what it talks about in that first line up there, violation description, race, sex, date of offense. And the e-citation was supposed to be the next step to be able to tell us if our people were being stopped on the street because of speeding or if there was some other reason that they were stopped. So I don't know if it's even the most current. Has that been upgraded since they started putting it in the vehicles? Do all the vehicles have it?
From what I understand, they do. So the data that JJ has, regrettably, I don't have this in any format that anybody can. Let me just view it here so I can zoom it in so you guys can see it a little bit better here. This is the kind of data that we see here that's available. And it shows the citation type, it shows the ethnic, it shows race, it shows sex.
I tried to, maybe you shared that with me, or maybe I got it through the state's website, but I do remember seeing that data. And one of the things that I noticed is that in trying to analyze it myself, the descriptions are not always consistent. And the labels are different, and so that made it difficult for me to easily do some analysis, but with some additional, recoding and stuff, I'm really interested in learning more about that data set.
Well, I think, and this was sort of brought up when the concept of, how do you do heat maps comes up. I mean, there is difficulty in making sure that everybody's sort of on the same page of what a different item means, what it doesn't mean, how it's coded.
His second paragraph there is pretty interesting, isn't it? And that's what we see on that page you just showed us, that there could be an A, B, and C, but it could be something within A that's different violations. And then I thought that was really interesting too about the case number. Yeah, so he's able to judge by the number.
Yeah, so the
Alright.
last set of citations. So the following is one citation, but it's an A, B, C, and D. So there's one citation, so it adds up to one of those, number one in that column.
Okay,
But in this spreadsheet, it's actually down as 4 items.
okay,
And you have a license forfeit, B, no license, C, stop sign. So now I'm assuming someone ran a stop sign, and they didn't have a license, and they didn't have a license, and then D is a child restraint. So there's probably a child in the car that was not restrained properly. So that's one. It gets covered under one citation, but there's 4 items underneath it. That would be hard to code because just you'd have to separate those things out. So the Cleveland Peacemakers Alliance, I am going to defer. This is a grant that the city received. It was something that the school district was championing for as a federal grant. There's been some challenges, I believe, from the city to actually get the money. I was actually gonna let the mayor discuss that. And I'm just gonna park that item until we can bring the mayor in and see if the mayor would discuss that with us. I'm moving down to item number 6, which is public hearing preparation and scheduling. I think with all of the difficulty with the budget, I really have been focusing on that and reviewing that. I haven't made any headway on that particular item. In our last meeting, we sort of talked about doing a public hearing. I guess I'm at a point right now where I think we agreed that we would have a public hearing regarding traffic safety and deer management. Do we want 1 hearing? Do we want to have 2? I very much want to see, if what I would like to see the outcome, and I know you really don't want to work from this, but at least for me, a starting point, whether we walk down that path or find that there's a better path. I really think that we need to do a deer management. A survey is the first piece that you need to do. You need to know what you have before you can come up with solutions for that. And you do need to have a count done of where you are with your deer population. That has not been done in a while. And I think that's something that needs to get put in a budget, and it needs to get in a work plan, and it needs to get done. I'm not sure we can legislate for it, maybe we can, but I do wanna get I do wanna get some community support, or trying to get an understanding of the community supports it. I will tell you, there's nobody that tells me we should just leave the deer population just growing as it is. There's nobody, I hear that from nobody.
When
Yeah.
the ODNR's deer survey was mentioned, brought to our attention by at the time Transportation Committee, the cost for the ODNR survey was $1,700, and that was 3 years ago, so I would expect if we could put in the budget $2,000 and try to get that done in 25 or 26, if we can't get it in 25. Get that start, and then
I'm surprised it's so low, because I thought they used airplanes and they did infrared readings.
they have their special techniques, but that's what I was given by the people who researched it. Laura Marks did the research,
to
and
Laura
she
about
was in contact with ODNR, so
I'll follow up with her. I met with her about this.
she's very up to date on all that stuff, so. But I'm wondering, would you be inviting staff to the two hearings, this traffic safety and deer management? Would it be most efficient and convenient for them if we did them both within the same block of time? Did one for 1 hour and then one for another hour? A public hearing?
So I envision a public hearing of having some kind of presentation before, just to sort of provide a little bit of baseline for people, get some experts in. It's easier to talk about deer management. I think there's more experts out there regarding deer management. There was a person that used to be the head horticulturist, vice president of horticulture at the Holden Arboretum. They have a very aggressive deer management program. The Cleveland Metro Parks also has a similar deer management plan. Trying to get someone that, from them to sort of talk about their program and what they do as an initial starter. And then give it the opportunity for citizens to talk about it. That's sort of what I envision.
It's a good way to do it, you bet.
Well, I'm new at this council gig, so I really haven't seen how council members effective public hearing. Davita does a nice job at the dog park. I've been to those.
You frame it at the beginning with the expertise, and then you have enough time allotted for people who wish to contribute, to speak up. Use the same form that we do for council. They want to speak. If you choose to do it that way, or you could just start calling on people, but that becomes, then you miss somebody, and better if you have them sign up, so. It can be a great, and of course, publicity. Needs to be publicized like in the eCity News, so people know when and where.
So with the new form of government, how does that, I think you certainly invite relevant staff members. Do you give them the opportunity to speak? Do you not? How would we do that for each one of these subjects?
I would invite the people you want to speak from the staff. The relevant, most key people. It may not have to be more than 2 or 3 or even 1. I mean, they can frame the challenges that the city has with traffic. They can frame the challenges the city has with deer management. And of course, both of these issues become under the umbrella of the chief of police. So he can be a key person for both of those. I don't know who else you'd invite off the top of my head at this moment, but
Well, I think, we really don't have anything to do with the operation of the city except for the legislative side, okay? So, I think really when it comes to the people that do the heavy lifting, I really think that's a Dan Horgan, and that is a Mayor Sarin issue. So, I guess the question I have is, do we do 2 separate nights? Do we do 1 night? And is an hour enough for each? And if we had to do just one, which one of these is the most important? Maybe we start with that. Do we have a thought of which one is more important than the other? Yes.
I would, and I just jumped on the Ohio Department of Natural Resources website real quick, and they've got a primer for cities. So I would start with that, bringing someone in from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to talk to us. And they've got a guide for how you survey your residents to determine, they recognize that it's a controversial issue, to get the temperature of your residents first for doing any deer management. So I would start with bringing in some people to educate us about the issue, and then what resources the state would have available. For example, what would it cost to have that survey done? Is it something they can only do in the summertime?
Fall.
Because if the administration is not going to buy in on the issue of deer culling, I don't know, what I'm not prepared to say what the solution is to that, but I think first we need to have a public hearing on it to see that there is some sentiment. And then I think it would be difficult if there's going to be any resistance from the administration to doing deer culling. This is what the majority of the residents want. And we do have a real problem here with it.
I noticed Cleveland.com piece was uploaded just today about a presentation that County Councilwoman Sunny Simon gave to the South Euclid City Council just yesterday about the sterilization program that they have. And the results are positive, and so it no longer has the pilot designation, like it's officially a part of their toolbox. This is a very interesting piece that maybe Sunny would be willing to come and talk and answer questions.
I think that would be worthwhile. I think the more information, the more data we get, the better at this point.
Yeah.
It is sort of the from what I understood, the conventional wisdom and how that was playing out is you just can't rely on the sterilization. It's one piece. Because it's so expensive, it's sort of one piece of the equation. But I'd much rather not make that leap.
Right.
And hear it.
Well, excuse me, did it say in that article if the positive results are due to the sterilization program or in combination with the cull?
So they say the deer population is now stabilized,
Okay,
and they had a dual approach where they sterilized 160 deer and they culled 38. So it's hard to say that, it was one or the other, but it seems that at least with a combination
Yeah.
over a 4-year period, they are now saying that the population is stable and that it's actually a part of their toolbox.
I do know the mayor was waiting for those results to come out, so now we have them, so.
Do we think that deer management is more important than just general traffic safety?
I would like to say it's probably more timely because it's my understanding that ODNR does their inventories in the fall. So if we've got that one under our belts and could make some decisions about doing the inventory, we could have that all ready to go in the fall. We could fund it during the budgets and get it ready to go in the fall. Traffic study, talking about doing a survey perhaps at this point in time before we do a public hearing. That could give us information that's vital to us. The deer management program's been talked about for a long time. And I do think that we need to hear the community speak out on it specifically.
So I agree with that. So, I mean, and also I'm trying to remember, I'm trying to just think about what our bandwidth is.
Yeah.
So, and I think both getting the survey out, just getting that out quickly is better, and also dealing with the deer management. So I like that suggestion. Do we all? Do you have any thoughts?
No, I unless, you know, the administration has got something in the works to do a survey out, then we need to proceed with that. And is that something we need to budget for? At least to obtain some estimates. Do we use the last company that did the survey as a benchmark, elaborate upon that, and add some questions that weren't asked previously, specifically on traffic safety and the issue of the deer, and whether that's perceived as a problem or not.
Okay. I think that's good.
That's a good amount of work.
So I know.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other thoughts on these items before we go into new and old business? Any new and old business, new or old business? Any other things? Okay, well, thank you for being here. Let's adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thanks.